Welcome to another episode of Time, Talent, Treasure Radio from Stewards Planning Group. Stewards Planning Group is a company that specializes in helping you build purposeful retirement plans, custom plans that not only help clients steward their treasure, but also their time and talent as well. They believe if you're taken care of financially, you can go even further to make the family, community, and kingdom impact you truly desire to make, which is the ultimate purpose of wealth. If you'd like to set up a no-cost, no-obligation meeting with one of their financial advisors, please give them a call at 222-4236. You can request a meeting at stewardsplanning.com, or you can simply stop by their office on 19th Avenue Southwest in Wilmer.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Time, Talent, Treasure Radio. I'm your host, Ben Taatjes, joining you again in our studio with one of our advisors, Claire Molden, Certified Financial Planners in the office with me today. How you doing, Claire?
Hey Ben, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Winding down the year here. It's, always get to September, October right around the corner, right? We're getting closer to the end of the year. Things get really crazy busy around our office this time of year, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, we're kind of, it seems to be like summers, things can be a little less busy, but then when we get towards the end of the year, there's so many things happening that people want to get done before the end of the year. And we just end up getting really busy. One of those things that is on our minds a lot right now, and a lot of our clients, what we're talking about is estate planning. Of course, October is actually technically Estate Planning Awareness Month. I know it's still September, but we wanted to get a head start on that because it is so important. And as any of our listeners know, we changed the name of the company to the Stewards Planning Group. And as we have made that shift, people are asking, what's a steward's plan? And we've been through that, all these shows, and the last step of a steward's plan is the transfer step, which is what do we do with what's left over? So again, if we know what we have, we know what we're stewarding, step number one. Step number two is how much of that do we need now and in the future to live on? Step number three is the transfer step, which is effectively, it is estate planning, isn't it? And how many times, Claire, don't you sit down with a client and walk through these very things, like what do I do with what's left over?
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of all of my meetings. And I know the last couple episodes that we've had with the other advisors, we talked about planning for the unexpected. Well, that's what step 3 of a steward's plan is. You're planning for the unexpected. What happens to my assets if I pass away, if my spouse passes away? What happens if I lose my job? What happens to that asset? So it's creating that plan so that you can navigate those unexpected life changes. To your point, estate planning is a huge part of that. I mean, creating a will, creating your power of attorney, your healthcare directive. Do you need a trust? The pros and the cons. What am I trying to achieve with these types of strategies?
Yeah, and I think, of course, we're not attorneys. I mean, you're a certified financial planner. And we have, so many advisors in our office that are able to ask a ton of questions. We're able to review documents and say and set goals and objectives. And one of the things that I think we do very well here is explain what is complex to something simple. And I've watched our advisors do it over the years. It's like if we can take what an attorney or a CPA brings to us and say, well, this is what this means in somewhat plain English. I think that's a valuable thing. So while we can't create an estate plan, we can come alongside and really quarterback it. So okay, here, let's summarize some goals. Let's do a goal review of how much giving do you want to be giving to your children while you're living? How much giving do you want to give to charity while you're living? What do you expect to do and what do you plan on when you pass away someday? So we can talk through these things. Of course, pretty simple thing, and what we do all the time is reviewing life insurance, making sure that we're looking at it for performance, goals, beneficiaries, and how it might tie into your estate plan. But then getting, I think, more into the charitable side of estate planning is something I see our advisors do as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because we have this, we kind of look at the pros and cons. Some people want to give while they're living. Some people want to give after death, and you weigh both of those out. Sometimes it's a little bit of both. Sometimes it's one or the other. It really comes down to what are the client's goals and how do they want to see that to fruition.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, I just was in a meeting this week with a client that we were trying to, they had a very, very large estate, and the goal, we had set aside a certain amount for the kids, and we knew, okay, here's how much I want my children to get someday. But that wasn't everything. There was again, what do we do with what's left over? The leftover was going to be a very large amount. So they said, well, I'd rather not pass away someday and have a pile of money go to these charities. And really that'd be from an estate tax standpoint, that would work. But from an income tax planning standpoint, we would have left a lot on the table. So in that circumstance, we were able to create a plan that allowed that client to utilize the income tax benefits of doing a lot of that gifting well before they pass away someday. And yes, it's still going to reduce the size of their estate because it's no longer there, but it also allowed them to get a lot of income tax benefits for the next 20 or 30 years. And if they happen to pass away before they've given it all away, then the estate documents come in and make the gifts from there.
Yeah, you're right, Ben. Our job is to help our clients align their goals within estate planning and tax planning.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Claire. How do we get to those goals, right? We ask a series of questions, right? So I know we've got a standard list of questions, but I'll highlight a couple of them now. But one of the questions I like to ask, it's tough, and clients usually struggle with this, but it's, if something happened to you today, does your family know who to turn to help? And often it's like, yeah, who would they go to? Well, we do fulfill that function for a lot of our clients. They know that we're one of the first calls they make because we do have the organization inside of their stewards plan. Another question I love to ask is, if your children received all of your wealth today, what would be the best and worst possible outcomes? That's a tough one. And people look at us like, oh yeah, it gets their mind thinking a little bit differently. And
it's important to state, when we ask those questions in our office, we don't get a response right away. They look at us like they're deer in the headlights because they're not questions that they've ever been asked before or maybe even considered before. So I just had clients in my office where I was asking some of these questions, and they looked at each other and they said, is this marriage counseling?
And sometimes it looks that way.
Sometimes it is.
And I think it really comes down to wisdom and discernment. And part of that is having the right questions to ask that gets the client to think outside of their normal questions, right? You have to get them thinking deeper. And that's exactly what those questions do. So sometimes does it look like marriage counseling? Well, maybe a little bit, but that's because sometimes we don't talk about this stuff enough. And I think that's really what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've got one last question, and this one is really deep, and it really gets people thinking. But the question is, can you give too much wealth to your children? And are you comfortable treating children differently in your wealth transfer plan? That's a tough one.
It is a tough one because it gets to that fair versus equal question when it comes to our kids. What's fair isn't always equal, and what's equal isn't always fair. And you as parents or grandparents or whatever have to kind of use judgment on what you think is best.
Yeah, again, it comes down to discernment, and our job is to ask the questions, to summarize the information, and from there, really kind of finish off what we call a steward's plan, knowing what we do with what's left over. All right, until next week, from all of us at Stewards Planning Group, steward well.
Do you need help stewarding your time, your talent, or your treasure? If so, Stewards Planning Group can help. Now is the time to set up a no-cost, no-obligation meeting. You can do this one of three ways. Number one, give them a call right now at 222-4236. You can request a meeting online at stewardsplanning.com, or you can just stop by their office located on 19th Avenue Southwest in Wilmer. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Time, Talent, Treasure Radio. We'll see you next time.
Securities offered through Cetera Wealth Services, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Cetera Investment Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity.